Hey everybody, today we just kind of want to talk about potential modifications for Mora knives. This one I have had for over 15 years. I got when I was a teenager, and as you can see, not much of it looks very original. So to begin, I didn't start, but this is one of the main modifications. I replaced the old plastic sheath that they gave with one that I made, and this was a learning process. I made this over 10 years ago, just with some leather I had around, some leather thong material from Walmart, and the rattlesnake skin that somebody had given me. And as you can see, it is quite worn. It was just ripping through there, peeling off the corners. It's the wound that the snake had at some point on there. But you know, it tells a story. I've had this knife so long that even the modifications have modifications. So I did this with a wet form leather that I got from my uncle. I don't even know what kind it is. And because it was so bright here, I colored it with permanent marker to try to make it a little darker, but even that's faded. So that was black permanent marker on the edges there. I don't even think I had glue. I think I used hot glue at some point, which fell out. There might be a little left. Super glue and knots and stuff. But you know, it was the first knife sheath I made, and it's held up, so I didn't bother replacing it. I made it with a dangler style, simply because that was what I was able to do, but I find it really convenient. The size of this knife is so small that you can keep it if you have deep enough pockets, you can keep it in your pockets. I made this, I tried doing a reverse twist, but I didn't know how to do it at the time, so it's just kind of a mildly tangled leather mess. But you know what, it does the job. Holds it just about as good as the original, maybe a little bit better, simply because gravity kind of helps keep it straight, as opposed to the original sheath, which kind of is a little bit too rigid, and sometimes it would pop out. And one time I was skateboarding and I had this knife on my belt, and it popped out on the ground, got all scuffed up, got all dented. But some of the other modifications I have done, one of the first things I did was I sanded off some of the red. I just gave it a light oil. I think I used mineral oil at the time, which is probably not the most appropriate material for this. I did redo the end a little bit. You can see it kind of sanded it down because it's a little bit more of a flat on the original ones. And I kind of beveled the edges a little bit, brought it in. Eventually, I was not so happy with just the brightly colored bolster there. I just didn't like the look of it. So I used just some leather that I had wrapped with friction, tucked it underneath. Gives it a little grip, makes it a little different look, a little more rustic. But recently I have just kind of glued that in place just so that it's not slipping around every now and again. Because you don't want it slipping when you're really gripping up on there. But it also helps when you're kind of doing a little bit of a pinch or doing a slice cut of some sort. So yeah, I did end up wrapping that. I had ground down the blade because on the internet I saw somebody who did this cool little, I don't know if it's like a finger choil, but it was just like a little dip in the blade there, which did take away from the actual length of the blade. But it looked, well, I thought it looked cool at the time. It really did take away some of the length of the blade, but it did allow me to be able to get a little bit closer to the edge without slicing myself if I was ever doing any sort of pushing or stabbing motion. So that did help somewhat. It is a little bit duller back there, so that helps a little bit. I chipped the tip off the blade at one point, so I needed to bring that down. And a lot of the original Moras, they do not have a really good flat edge for doing flint striking. So it's really easy to just take that down with a grinder. What I did was a file. So I flattened the top edge here just to make it a little bit easier to get sparks off of a fire steel. And then I brought down the tip a little bit because it was a little bit more of a clip point, kind of came up a little bit on the original. Because I chipped off the tip there, just made it a little more of a drop point. Relatively recently, I did also do a cold bluing on this, just to kind of see if it could. I've never tried it. Looked really cool before the sharpening. Still looks fine but you know, when you have a fully black blade, it looks pretty neat. One of the negatives, obviously, is that when you sharpen, well, guess what? It removes the surface. And since this blade is a little bit bent from just aggressive use over the years, you can kind of see where it's bent a little bit more, where it scrapes off. So, you know, if you're afraid to use your knives, well, Mora is great for that because it's cheap as heck. You can get 5 of them. So, you know, it does the job. It does it well. You don't have to feel bad about doing it. But just some interesting little modifications that I've done on this knife over the last 15, 16 years. So every once in a while I think about replacing it. I just can't bring myself to do it because it's just such a good knife. So see you guys in the next one.